the MMA fortune teller, reporting live once again on a beautiful Thursday morning. Drinking on my morning breakfast protein shake, blueberries, strawberries, bananas. Got to keep the brain fresh. We got a big weekend coming up. Great opportunity to make some money. UFC 236. Before we get into that, let's take a look back at our 2 weeks ago, our last plays. Things didn't work out as good as I wanted them to. Got the win in Sadiq Yusuf over Shayman Moraes. But I did lose the Karolina Kowalkiewicz fight against Michelle Waterson. I was very disappointed in Karolina's performance. Expected way more from her than what she gave. I did have a couple questions in that fight, but I still thought, it was Karolina's fight, no doubt. But you could definitely see Michelle is making improvements in her game. And, she wanted the W more than Karolina, and she took it. Cost me a little bit of money, but overall, not a horrible night. Sadiq came in with a nice win. So, great main event. Justin Gaethje, hell of a knockout. He's a beast, that guy, man. Looking forward to seeing him getting there with some top talent soon once again. Overall, it was a disappointing card as well. One fight that I was on the fence with that I was very close to making one of my plays that I didn't was the Jack Hermansson fight against Dave Branch. That was really one of my gut instincts to take that fight, and for whatever reason, I was doing the research and looking into Branch's past, and he's proven to be a crafty veteran, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go up against him in that play, but looking back, that is a play I definitely should have took. Jack Hermansson is a hell of a fighter, and I'm actually stoked to hear that he's going to be main eventing right down the street from my house over here in Fort Lauderdale. So he'll be taking on Jacare Souza, replacing Romero. I might be one of the few people that's actually happy to hear that. I'm a Romero fan, but, I've seen that fight already. Romero, he's getting up there in age. Yeah, he's still a hell of a fighter, but I want to see the new blood, man. And I'm into this guy, Hermansson, man. He's a promising fighter, so I think he's going to take Jacare out, and I'm looking forward to seeing that live. So moving right along, let's take a look at the first fight of UFC 236. We got Randy Costa versus Brandon Davis. This guy Randy's jumping right into the UFC, bright and early in his career. He's just 4-0, has 4 finishes. To be honest with you guys, it was hard to get a lot of footage to watch on this guy. I mean, even if you could pull up all 4 of his fights, there's only, like I said, there's only 4 fights, so you're not going to get too much on this guy. He's finishing these guys, but, who is he finishing? So take that with a grain of salt. Then you got Brandon Davis jumping down to 135. Brandon Davis is a guy I've never really been too impressed with. He's had losses to top guys like Zabit, but he's also had losses to guys like Bochniak, who I'm not too high on. So, it's pretty much set what kind of fighter he's going to be in my mind. But then again, he's fighting a guy, Randy Costa. We don't have any clue what type of fighter this guy is. So, this is a fight that I would stay far from. You don't know how Brandon Davis is going to do with the weight cut. And the main thing, like I said, man, this guy, Randy, we don't know enough about this guy to really make a play on him. So, this is a fight I would not touch. So, take it as it is. Moving on to the next fight, we got Poliana Botella versus Lauren Mueller. 2 girls that train at top fight camps. You got Lauren Mueller training at Alliance in San Diego. A lot of great fighters out of that camp. Of course, the great Dominic Cruz, a bunch of other guys, Phil Davis. Then you got Poliana Botella fighting out of Nova União. The crazy Brazilians, man. A lot of lightweight Brazilian scrappers, man. Aldo, Barao in his prime. Obviously, he's a shell of himself now, but a lot of top guys, man. The list goes on and on. Botello, this is a fucking sexy Brazilian girl, man. I'll give her that, but very disappointed in her last performance. I thought she was a little bit more promising, and her last fight against Cynthia was definitely a step back. Her grappling needs improvement. And then we got this girl Lauren Mueller. She was very, on the up and up, 5-0. A lot of people had high praises on her, and she dropped the ball big time in her last fight. The big favorite, she dropped the ball, majorly. So this is a tough fight, really a tough fight to call. I was watching a lot of footage on these girls, and I lean Pollyanna, but I think the line is off. This is a fight. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. So definitely another fight that I won't be touching. Wouldn't have any money on either of these girls. Unreliable, and that's not what we're looking to do. We want to have our money on the reliable source, the reliable fighter, so we capitalize and make some money. And speaking of making money, in this next fight, we got Montel Quick Jackson versus the Asian sensation, Andre Sukumtat. This is one of my plays right here, man. I'll tell you right now. I mixed Montel in a bunch of parlays going back a week or two. I have him mixed with baseball bets that already cashed. I had him mixed all up in Bellator's past event with Andrei Koreshkov, Daniel Strauss, a bunch of plays that already cashed, and he's the last leg of my parlay, and I'm very confident that it's going to come through. Montel Jackson has multiple ways to win this fight. The more composed fighter, early in his MMA career, but you could just see every time he steps in the cage, leaps and bounds, great amount of potential. You could see this guy being an eventual contender, and then he's fighting a guy, the Asian sensation, who I'm just not impressed with whatsoever. Some of the worst fight IQ I've ever seen in the octagon. I had a play on Sean O'Malley, months ago, and that was a fight that Andre could have easily won and just absolutely handed the fight over to Sugar Sean O'Malley. He has him where, O'Malley can't even stand up, and the fight would have ended, and the guy's just jumping in, tripping, falling into him, giving him a chance to survive the end of the third round where it goes to decision and he wins the fight. Besides that, I've seen it other times with him. Just a horrible fighter, man. And, he has some pop in his hands. The only way I see him winning this fight is if he connects with the flash KO. Other than that, if you look at my Instagram posts, Montel Jackson's one of my plays I posted. I have him a 9 out of 10 confidence rate. Jumped all over him at minus 350 odds. The lines got worse. But, hopefully you guys jumped on this ahead of time, or you guys are keeping in touch with me through Instagram where, I'm relaying this information to you, as soon as I'm registering this, doing my fight footage, or, checking when these fights are announced. So the play is definitely Montel Jackson. This is pretty much going to be my most confident pick on the card. So you guys take advantage of it. I know the line's not as good as it once was, but I still recommend you make some money on this fight. Next, we got Belil, remember the decision, Muhammad versus Curtis. No grappling skills whatsoever, Melender. This is a fight I've been going back and forth with quite some bit. It's hard to bet on a guy like Curtis, man, with his grappling skills. Being in the UFC, if you have the level of grappling skills a guy like him does, it's hard to ever put money on him. I mean, you saw his last fight. I made some money on that with Ezequiel Dos Santos. Absolutely just babied him, just mopped the fucking mat with him. But that being said, though, Curtis does have some solid stand-up, and he could pretty much, in my opinion, he could finish anybody on the feet, in the right situation. Could definitely outpoint them on the feet. But, fighting this guy, Muhammad has solid stand-up, and he can mix in the takedown once in a while. So, it's a tough fight to call. If Muhammad just goes in and just straight tries to wrestle and he's able to get him down, this fight, it could be his all day. But if Curtis is able to stuff some takedowns and this fight stays on the feet, I got Curtis on the feet all day. Here's the thing. Curtis just fought, less than a month ago, and you saw where his level of grappling is. Even though I think Dos Santos is a better grappler than Muhammad, they're pretty close. So the amount of time that he's had to try to up his grappling game, it's obviously not enough. So, analyzing all that, I'm going to have to slightly edge Belil to win this fight. But remember, if he's not able to get the takedown and hold him down, I got Curtis winning the fight. But, the pick is Belil. On to the next. We got one of my former plays from the last month or two, Max Griffin versus Zalim Amadov. Yeah, man, Max Griffin really let me down in his last fight against Thiago Alves. I definitely believe he did win that fight, but I was very disappointed that he even allowed that fight to be as close as it was, because he should have ran away with that fight. And as great shape as he looked when he came into that fight, man, because when I was looking at him at the weigh-ins, I was licking my chops, counting the cash. He looked to be in the best shape I've ever seen him in. And he just dropped the ball. He gassed out. And as great shape as he looked, he had a horrible gas tank in that fight. For whatever his reasons were, I don't know. I mean, but, even besides his gas tank, man, he continued to show that he's a fighter that's just not on that level. The way he moves around the octagon, his striking, horrible accuracy. He really doesn't connect, the way he throws, it's not good. I would take him in a play against Thiago Alves all day. But in a play like this, against a guy who's 8-0, undefeated, 24 years old, I don't care who this guy's fought before. You watch the videos on his fights, and he's ferocious. When he's throwing his hands, he's looking, every punch that he throws, he's looking to take the other guy's head off, And although, he's barely ever left the first round, I think he's only made it to the third round once before. This is a guy that I don't question his gas tank that much, because just the way he fights, man, fighting out of Russia, you take a look at him, he's young, he looks good, he's in shape. I think that this is going to be the type of guy that, he can go 3 rounds hard whenever he wants. He's training over in the U.S. right now. He's showing that he's willing to sacrifice, where he's from, where he grew up, where he lives, to come get the best training he can. And from all the stories that I'm hearing, man, this guy's an absolute beast in the gym. So, I'm gonna lean Zaleem in this fight. There's no way you can take Max in this type of situation. And I think that Max, I don't know how much longer this guy's gonna even last in the UFC. I think he'll be gone, sooner or later. So we'll take Zaleem for the win. And don't be surprised if he gets a knockout, second, third round. All right, for those of you guys that still like watching flyweights fight, we got Wilson Hayes versus Alexandre Pantoja. Wilson Hayes, man, this is a guy I've been watching from a way long time ago, man. He was fighting at bantamweight back in Bellator. Always a crafty fighter, great jiu-jitsu. Really, if you look at his losses, man, they're only to top-notch fighters, man. Even since back when he was in Bellator. He only lost to, Eduardo Dantas. Top guys, man, really. If you come in and you're a subpar fighter, he'll take you out, man. He'll choke you out. He'll finish you. But fighting Pantoja, this guy, man, he's a tough dude, big for the weight class, great striking, and I'm going to lean for Pantoja to win this fight. I think he has more ways to win it. I think the jiu-jitsu will be nullified. Wilson Hayes, that's his main strength, but I think Pantoja has just as good jiu-jitsu, at least good enough to prevent anything bad from happening to him in that sense. And then, I think the fight will take place on the feet, where he'll have the edge. He'll have the reach advantage, the height advantage, better footwork, more crisp striking. And as long as he keeps from getting grapple fucked and held down, or, just getting out decisions by getting his back taken or something like that, getting backpacked, this is his fight all day. I would like to see him come out here and get a finish. I would like to see him get a nice knee, a nice flying knee, man, a nice overhand right, something crisp, make a statement. Spice up the flyweight division, you know what I mean? After everything that's been going on with it, there's obviously reasons why all that's happening with the flyweight division. How about leave it for a guy like him to make a statement, you know what I mean? Start making these flyweight fights great again, you know what I mean? So that's what I want to see, and I'm leaning for him to win this fight one way or another. Whether or not he gets that finish, I think he'll win this fight. And Hayes, man, he's getting old. I don't know how many more fights he has left in the game, but hats off to him. But I don't see him winning the fight. Taking a look at the next fight, we got Matt the Steamroller Frevola versus Jalen the Tarantula Turner. This is a fight I'm very much looking forward to on this card. I know it's not two of the biggest names, but I think it's a perfect recipe for a great fight, or at least a great knockout. You got Matt Frevola. This guy, he's only had, 8 professional fights, only going into his 3rd fight in the UFC. But this guy brings it. You could watch all his fights, man, even before he got in the UFC. Dana White Contender Series fight. This guy comes to steamroll you. And if he doesn't steamroll you, he might get steamrolled himself. Like in his first fight in the UFC. He came out there trying to take that Mexican's head off, and he ended up getting his own head taken off. Marco Polo Reyes, tough dude. Sometimes you can't just run in there like that. His last fight against Lando Venata, Was a hell of a fight. I think he should have won that fight. I think if he would have cleaned up a couple different things in his arsenal, a couple different techniques. I think he keeps his head on the center line way too much and eats way too many shots. He needs to learn how to implement a little bit more head movement into his game. But he has a hell of a chin. He can eat punches. Lando Venado was tagging him up with punches, head kicking him. I mean, he couldn't put him away for anything. Not that Lando has the most power, but, he's very precise with his striking. Lando could finish anybody, at the right time. He'll finish you. But he couldn't finish Frevola, so it shows you how tough Frevola is. And then you got this guy, Jalen Turner, he's already been finished, knocked unconscious 3 times, and he's only 24 years old, and he's had, 12 fights. So, this is a guy, you got to watch out because Frevola, he hits hard too, man. And if he connects, if he connects, I think Jalen's going to go to sleep, So that is my pick. Frevola is my pick, but I won't be surprised if Jalen uses his athleticism and, is able to clip Frevola as well. Because Frevola, like I said, man, does not move that head off the center line. So, if he decides to trade, like I believe they will, and if Frevola doesn't catch Jalen quick enough to put him out, and Jalen is able to hop on an opportunity and connect on Frevola first and put him out, I would not be shocked. But I think Frevola will pull through. I think he just has more chances to win this fight, more opportunities. I think he's a better grappler. I think there's still the chance that he might show that Jalen's grappling is not up to par. Frevola, man, he's training over there with Sarah Longo, tough dude, cauliflower all over his ears. Tough grappler dude too, even though he likes to trade in the pocket. So, I'll lean Frevola all day on this fight. Up next, we got a rematch of Nikita Krylov and OSP, Ovince St. Preux. Nikita Krylov, it's crazy, man. This guy's only 27 years old. He already has 30 fights. He's already been in the UFC, left the UFC. He's back. And he's 27 years old now, and he's a guy that when he first came in, he showed a lot of promise, but he's dropped the ball, quite a few times. When he's fighting guys that are not really the best of fighters, he definitely shows up, finishes them. He'll knock you out. If you're not up to par, he'll finish you. But when it comes to even, the above average type fighter, the Misha Serkinov, the Jan Blachowicz, he drops the ball, man. He gets rocked by Misha on the feet and then guillotined years ago in his first stint in the UFC. Comes back, and he loses his first fight back, to Jan. Jan is an underrated fighter, though. I think he's a tough dude, so maybe that's not saying too much. And, OSP, I just think OSP is more on the decline. 36 years old. He's been around the block. I think Nikita's more on the incline. OSP's in the decline. So, based off that, I'm going to slightly lean Nikita. But I would not be surprised at all if OSP steps up to the plate, maybe takes this fight a little bit more serious for whatever reason. And, he can maybe pull off a submission or somehow, maybe keep the stand-up close enough and get some takedowns, hold him against the cage, win some scrambles and pull the fight off. But, I want to see Nikita win, man. This is a guy that, there's more potential with him going forward. OSP, been there, done that. He has a couple more fights left in him, and, he'll be probably retiring soon. So I'm hoping Nikita gets a nice flash knockout, gets a little hot streak going again in the UFC, and we'll start to see him get some big fights coming up, heading to the future. Keeping it moving, we got Alan Jouban, the model, making his return. He's been out the game for a little bit, fighting the relatively new UFC fighter, Dwight Grant, fighting out of AKA, Dana White Contender Series veteran, couple UFC fight veteran as well at this point, coming off a beautiful TKO punch in his last outing against Carlo Pedersoli. But it was a fight that he was getting picked apart. He was definitely losing that fight up until that point he got that knockout. And pretty much if he didn't get that knockout, he was definitely going to lose that fight. So, I'm not the biggest fan of Dwight Grant's style. He fights on his back foot, looked for that counter punch. And I just feel like with a fighter like that, if he doesn't get that knockout, he's going to lose a lot of decisions. Especially against a guy like Alan Jouban. Alan Jouban is a very precise striker, good Muay Thai. He's going to throw hard body kicks. He's going to outvolume you. He's getting up there in age. and his chin is questionable as well. So, I'll pretty much sum this fight up to you like this. I think this fight's going to take place in the feet, and Dwight Grant is either going to get the counter KO or he's going to lose the fight. So when you're looking at the odds, analyze it in that sense. You know what I mean? If do you want to put some money on a guy that you need a knockout from, or do you want to put the money on a guy that maybe can get a knockout? Maybe, I don't know about that so much, but probably going to get the decision and outvolume the other fighter. So, that's my reason for siding with Allen in this fight. It'll be a good fight to watch. Keep an eye on this one, see what happens. Crawling forward to those big fights at the top of the mountain, that main event and co-main event. We got one more fight before that. We got Eric Anders and Khalil Roundtree, the co-main event to the co-main event. I'm looking forward to this fight very much so. These aren't two of the top MMA fighters when it comes to like overall skill level. But when it comes to putting these guys in the cage and having an exciting fight that you want to tune into and watch, these guys are always involved in those types of fights. Khalil Roundtree, horrible cardio. In the first round, though, great hands, great finishing power, an exciting guy to watch. Eric Anders, kind of slow, but tough dude. He likes to engage, man. He likes to brawl it out. And I think these two are going to make for a hell of a fight. I was torn on this fight. I went back and forth. I think Anders has maybe more ways to win the fight. If Roundtree gets tired, maybe Anders gets some takedowns. But I also have a feeling that this fight's just not going to go like that. Just with the magnitude of this card, I think that these guys are going to rise to the occasion, and they're going to want to, just have a hell of a stand-up fight, just brawling it out. And I think somebody's going to get knocked out. And that being said, I'm going to slightly lean with Khalil Roundtree just for the fact that I think he's the more explosive, faster striker, and I think he might get a first-round knockout. I think he might get a first, maybe a second-round knockout. If not, he's going to be in trouble if he starts to gas out and if Anders wants to play it safe, because it doesn't take much, to get under those legs, start getting some takedowns, and just, seal off a decision. But I hope that's not the case, and I hope this ends up being a first-round war where they just duke it out. And maybe, that being the case, I think Roundtree will get the KO. So, but here we go. We made it to the top of the hill. The two big fights of the night. We'll start off with the co-main event. Kelvin Gastelum fighting Israel Adesanya. It's crazy. I feel like it was just a couple weeks ago. Israel's in there toying around with Anderson Silva and, hops on the mic and he's telling Kelvin, hey, take that belt off, all the controversy, what's going on with Whitaker, this and that. And, as he's talking shit to Kelvin, you couldn't help but wonder, man, how does that fight play out? Imagine these, they're going to match these guys up, if Whitaker's out with this injury. And you're trying to think how this fight's going to happen. Before you know it, they're stepping in the octagon. They put this together very quick, which I'm very excited about. Can't wait to see how this fight plays out. We finally get to see how Israel does with a true test in Kelvin, because that's what this is, man. Kelvin is no joke. Ever since he bumped up to middleweight, this guy's been putting veterans to sleep. Tim Kennedy, Michael Bisping, Vitor Belfort, coming off a nice solid win against Jacare. Very close fight. This guy, he's the cream of the crop. Believe it or not, he might be small for the division. He might not look the most intimidating. But this guy, whether you want to believe it or not, is the cream of the crop, man. He's up there with the best of them. And Israel's going to find that out, man, because, I don't really feel that Israel's been tested. That fighting an old 40-year-old in the 40s, Anderson Silva, that ain't going to cut it. Derek Brunson, a guy that, trips over his own feet. He's like leaning over his feet in his fights. That ain't going to cut it. Brad Tavares, okay, he's a decent, solid guy. He showed up in that fight. That would probably be his best outing I've ever seen. That or the Brunson fight, but, I think Brad Tavares was a true test. The Marvin Vettori fight was very close. Split decision. That could have went either way. And Marvin he hasn't proved to be shit. So, take that as you want. All the other guys he's beat before that ain't shit at all. Check the records out. Look into these guys that he's beat. One thing that a lot of people are really not looking into as much, I want to see how he handles a 5 round war with a guy that can take him down to the mat as he gets tired. Because Kelvin does have some underrated wrestling. Kelvin also has excellent striking, as I stated before. So don't be surprised if Kelvin connects with the left and puts him to sleep too. Israel's been put out before. I know that was in kickboxing, but if anything, that even proves to you more so that he can get knocked out in an MMA fight. Smaller gloves. If Kelvin connects, he will put Israel out. Mark my words that I said that. But just the overall MMA game. When you saw Israel fighting Silva, to me, I was not impressed whatsoever. He does his little flashy things, but overall, you see the holes in his game. You see him getting connected on by Silva. You see, I don't know, man, the head movement, it's not all there. He has that kickboxing type of striking. Sometimes it doesn't always, transfer over to the MMA just as smoothly as you would want it to. So, I don't know, man. I've been torn on this fight. I know I was ranting and raving about Kelvin, but, I still think that Israel has a great chance to win this fight. If he can keep it on the feet for 5 rounds, avoid the knockout, it would be hard to say that he doesn't, win a decision and outpoint Kelvin. But, fuck. I'm going to go with Kelvin to win this fight. I'm going to take the underdog in this fight. I think Kelvin has a couple more ways to win this fight. He has more opportunities, so very close fight. But I'm gonna edge Kelvin, believe it or not. So here we go to the main event of the night: Dustin the Diamond Poirier versus Max Blessed Holloway. I mean, what can you say, man? You got two blue chip fighters, fighters that give you a run for your money anytime you bet on these guys, and pretty much bring the money home. Unless they're fighting Conor McGregor, they're winning fights. Max Blessed Holloway, quite possibly the second best featherweight to ever do it, behind Conor. It's between him and Aldo, in my opinion. And then you got Dustin the Diamond Poirier, a guy that, has been around the block. I've been watching this guy since he's been in the WEC, watching him for years, man, just watching his game just continue to excel. Used to be a jiu-jitsu guy. He slowly transitioned just to a complete warrior. Jiu-jitsu, striking, trains at American Top Team right down the street from my house. I would love to bump into this dude sometime. I always see him in videos like the countdown. I mean, literally right down the street from my house. Seems like a hell of a guy, man. Good family man. And a complete savage in the octagon. This fight was very hard to call for me. I mean, one thing I can say for sure is I feel the line is off. I understand why, Max coming off that last fight against Ortega, where, people were underestimating him, or they were worried for the fact that, that whole weight cutting situation where he looked like he was having a stroke and all that. So, not that many people put their money up on him. I sure did, because I knew that if he came true to form, which I was banking on more likely than not, he was going to destroy Ortega. Ortega is a jiu-jitsu guy that, he gets flash finishes once in a while, but that wasn't happening on Max. No way, no how. Max just put an absolute beating on Ortega. Probably took a couple years off Ortega's life. But, Max Blessed is absolutely no joke. I think he's actually going to be the bigger man come fight night. This guy, I think he's a true lightweight. He's getting older, man. He's a thick dude, big legs. I think, he might look better than ever at lightweight. That's one thing we got to take into consideration, too. Dustin Poirier, I just think that, he has the better jiu-jitsu, maybe the better overall game. But I have a feeling that this fight is just going to turn into a brawl, and I'm going to side with Max. I went back and forth in this fight. Like I said, I think the line's off, so, that's a dog or pass type of fight, unless the line moves closer and you can get Max at a better price. But as of now, it's a dog or pass. But, Max is just, come on, let's talk about Max for a minute. This guy is on a 13-fight win streak. Literally, just absolutely just destroying guy after guy, veterans of the game, man. Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo 2 times finishes him. Ortega, beats Lamas in a nice decision win. Jeremy Stevens, Charles Oliveira, Cub Swanson. He's beat the who's who. He's been on a nice run. And I just don't see anything changing this upcoming Saturday. I think Max will prevail once again. This fight could be very, very close. You know, it could turn out to be a complete war. Poirier is definitely game, and I can easily see him stepping up to the plate, just an absolute 5-round war, or, you know, as long as the fight lasts, just a complete war. But, you know, once it gets to that level, I'm just going to side more with Holloway. I think, you know, I've seen Poirier get slept before. You know, I've seen him get slept twice. So, you know, his brain definitely can shut off. Holloway, you know, I've yet to see that big old Hawaiian noggin, you know, turn off. So, you know, that's a big factor as well. You know, I just think that Holloway can take damage, man. He's like a thick-boned Hawaiian, and I think that's going to be, you know, that X factor, you know. Just he's a thick dude. He's going to eat the shots better, and I think Poirier might break down towards the late rounds, the 4th and the 5th. You know, or he survives, you know, or he survives and he loses the decision, you know. But, you know, it could go either way. At the same time, you know, if Poirier is going to win this fight, maybe he pulls off a submission, but I feel like that is just way less likely. So the pick in the main event of UFC 236 is Max Blessed Holloway, one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world. Definitely looking forward to these fights Saturday. Hope you guys all enjoy them wherever you're watching them. You know, I'll probably be at the local Duffy's, you know, sitting at the bar, getting loose, collecting money. Gonna chase a couple bookies around down over here in South Florida, make some extra bets. You know, I already got my couple of my plays. Try to get some more bets in. Already got my plays put in on Bovada, 5 dimes. So, you know, just getting ready to make some more money and enjoy watching some awesome fights. So, you know, God bless all you guys. Enjoy the fights. Take care. Signing out, The Teller.